Doing good. Did you pick a white background as a way of paying homage to the ethereal white Bufo realm?
No, it's just the background I've got.
Okay, so let's be real. Over the next few weeks, we're going to be doing a series of lives talking about Bufo, various different aspects in terms of the experience, the preparation, the integration, how it varies from other psychedelics. And of course, we'll touch on a bit of that tonight. But I thought, really, to get the ball rolling, let's start by talking about our personal experiences of Bufo. Um, and what I'm curious about is, firstly, what was going on in your life at the time that led you to want to experience the world's most powerful psychedelic? Because it's quite a radical decision to say, yeah, I think that's something I'm going to do this weekend. So set the scene. Where were you when you got the call? What were you looking for? And how did you arrive at that decision?
Yeah, could we go back 2 years? Around this time, 2 years ago, I had one mushroom experience, and I met up with people in the community. It was a community meetup. It was the first one I'd ever went to, and I was speaking to a guy who was just saying how he'd had lots of psychedelic experiences. He's got a retreat booked in a few weeks' time, and then he's got another one booked several months later. And I was just talking to you in one of our coaching sessions, just asking you about, I don't understand how people are having a psychedelic experience. They've not even had the one they're going on next and have booked several more further down. And in that conversation, you started talking about the different types of psychedelics and the patterns people go on in this journey. And you mentioned Bufo, and the way you described Bufo, like, it just, it spoke to me then. And a few days later, it was another event I went to, an ecstatic dance, and I was talking to someone in the Numinity community who was there, who mentioned Bufo and had a similar ex- experience where it was like, and so I've never heard of Bufo, and then in the space of a week, I'm hearing it twice, and so I'm like, okay, I want to experience this, but I didn't go like looking for a place um, to have this experience. It's kind of like I knew when the opportunity arises, it will be there. And so this was early part of 2024. Where now at the end of the year, I was going to Bali, and there were two things I really wanted to experience: a bufo ceremony and mushrooms in nature. And my friend Rue, who lives in Bali, was talking about how he can arrange any type of medicine experience I want. So I said to him, look, I'm coming for 3 weeks. Can you arrange Bufo for me? And he was like, yeah. I'll sort it for you. But then the synchronicity started to unfold. Running club. One week it was just me and a couple of our regulars, and I was just saying how I'm going to Bali, going to stop off in Dubai first, go to Bali, and then come back, and how I really want to experience Bufo. And they mentioned how they had done Bufo at a retreat the year before, and one of their friends lives in Dubai, went to Bali, had Bufo, and it was just synchronous. I'm like, can you connect me? I got in touch with my friend Rue and asked, like, have you made any arrangements? And he was like, no, if you found someone, go for it. And so it was trusting word of mouth, and I'm going to Bali, so I reach out to the guy and said, look, I'm going to be in Bali, do you have any space? And yeah, so what was happening in my life, I was coming up to a year of working with medicine, working with Jungian depth psychology, getting a lot more experience at working with my shadow, integrating. And I have this Bufo experience, which we can get into, but it was unreal.
Amazing, amazing how it kind of finds you, really infiltrates your field. And that's a common strand when people talk about plant medicine, psychedelics, how they experience the call is that you can just be going about your day, living your life, thinking that everything's wonderful or not. And if one of these medicines has a message for you, it will find its way into your consciousness. So tell me more about the experience, what it was like. Also, I think it's important to say that you can receive this medicine in so many different contexts, in everything from large group ceremonies, parts of retreats with other medicines as well, or at the other end of the spectrum, the way that we're working with it on the retreat, the way that you received it is in a much more intimate setting, receiving the medicine one to one. My doorbell's just gone. Start talking, Mo. Talk about your
Yeah.
experience.
So yeah, so my Bufo experience was a one-to-one. It was with a facilitator. We were set in nature pretty much, and we started off with what he called a handshake dose, just getting familiar with the medicine. Now, for people who don't know what Bufo is, it's from the toad, which is called Bufo alvarius. Is that how you pronounce it? And this toad lives in Mexico underground for 9 months. And 3 months of the year it's above ground. And it was in those months that they take the venom from the glands and they dry it and it becomes like a powder substance which you inhale, hold it in, and then you just surrender. And so I inhale this bufo and it's inside me. I let go and I fall back, and facilitator, he starts playing an instrument, he starts singing, he starts making sounds, and I'm in another realm. And I don't know, in terms of time, I had no concept of time, but I then come back round and there was an opportunity to take some more. Like, do you want some more? And the invitation was there and I accepted. And I remember in between one of the rounds, because each time you inhale, you can go in with an intention. In between one of those rounds, I just asked myself the question. I just asked the question, why me? Why am I so lucky to have this experience? Why am I so lucky to have this path open up to me to work with the medicine the year I just had? And like the previous year, 2023 was one of the worst years of my life, where there was just so much hate in me. I hated my life, hated the world, and that hatred was what drove me to depth psychology, shadow work, Jungian stuff, and mushrooms. And here I am a year later, just questioning, why me? Why am I so lucky? And then as I took the inhalation, the next thing I know, this me just wasn't there. Like, it didn't exist. And so I asked why me, and then me wasn't there. We talk about ego, death, and that might mean different things to different people, but for me, that the body wasn't there. And in total, I had 5 rounds of Bufo in that ceremony space, one to one, and it was just pure love, pure peace, absolutely zero fear. There was no fear at all. Just felt so much love for, like, I was staying with Rue and his family in Bali, and I just felt so much love for him and his family, for my family, for my friends, for my mentors, for my teachers, for like, it was just, you can't describe it. You know, Numinity derives from the three words, numinous, femininity, divinity, and Bufo was that, like, I can't describe it. You asked if the background, like ethereal, why it's, I was blanketed. I was like, I want to say I touched the divine, whatever that means. And yeah, so I've experienced mushrooms, I've experienced ayahuasca, and I've experienced Bufo. They are all amazing tools, amazing medicine we have. Bufo, the most profound I've experienced, where it took me to this place of just unconditional love and just peace. I can't describe it any other way apart from there's no fear. Like we go day to day, oh man, can I say this to this person, or I have to
Yeah.
do this. In that Bufo realm, it was kind of like divinity laugh, like smiling back at me, like you got nothing to worry about. And I can go on.
Yeah.
That was my experience.
Wow, wow, so powerful. We talked a bit before the last retreat about resistance and how challenging other psychedelics like ayahuasca can be sometimes because our ego just violently fights even before we get to the retreat. And during, as we're waiting to experience the medicine, our ego is going wrestling not to ascend. And with Bufo, what's amazing is, as you described it, it's a single inhalation. And by the time you finish taking that breath, you're on that rocket ship being blasted into another dimension. So you have no time for that internal struggle where you're battling with your own will and your resistance. So I think for people who have issues, particularly with letting go, with surrender, with control, it's a really amazing medicine just because there's no holding back. It really does just drop kick you into another beautiful dimension. Nitin has asked, how did that experience change your life?
Yes, I was actually going over my Bufo notes. So after every single journey I have, I make notes and I go back to them. And one of the biggest lessons for me was knowing when enough is enough. So many lessons. One of them is knowing when enough is enough. So after I had the fifth take, the invitation was, "Do you want some more?" And in that moment, it was a case of I've just experienced something I can't even describe. What more do I want from the medicine? I got everything I needed and wanted, and more than that. So in it became a metaphor for I'm at peace. I don't need any more of this medicine. So that has been a lesson, integration wise. Even we speak today, this week, I'm in the sauna. I was in the gym first thing in the morning and then in the sauna. And even when I'm like doing weights, for example, knowing when enough is enough in the sauna, I'm 15 minutes. I'm like, oh, do I really need to stay any longer? What am I trying to prove? And so on one level, that lesson has stayed with me. If I violate that, so last week I tried to be Superman, to fit in a gym session. I had lunch and I didn't give myself enough time for it to digest. I run to the gym, I do some weights, and then I'm in the sauna, and then I'm trying to run back, and I was ready to purge. And it was a lesson, man. You need to remember, know when enough is enough. Who are you trying to prove what to? So that's the first thing for me, was knowing that I don't need to prove anything to anyone, and knowing that enough is enough. The second thing was this need for external validation. So all my life, I have wanted somebody else to tell me what I should do. And when I have a challenge or a question, what would Melissa say? Or what would my teacher Bonnie say? Or what would my mentor David say? Or Leonard or Jack? Like, I've worked with so many coaches over the years. Like, personal development has been my life for the past 20 years. And I've always have wise people I can spar ideas with. The medicine was a reminder that all the answers are inside. And so now, it was, when was it? November 2024. We're in May 2026. I'm still now, the first thought isn't, oh, I need to speak to Bonnie, or I need to speak to David or Melissa. The first thought is, okay, I can sit with this. So that was another insight. And there were several more, but I think those two are quite potent at the moment, just reminders.
Yeah, wow, such important lessons. I think another thing with Bufo is often the because it's quite abstract, the experience itself. It's not like mushrooms or ayahuasca where you get like these really specific directions or mandates that come through. There's a real extraction of the symbolism and the metaphor of what the experience means to you. So, like you said, in that place where you just experienced everything and you're being asked, do you want more? No, I don't need more. It can be very easy, I think, to miss the messages if you don't do the integration properly. Whereas with ayahuasca or mushrooms, it can be very literal. You see something or you're shown something or you're literally spoken an instruction about a thing that you need to do. Whereas with Bufo, it's just like, I remember my first ceremony, someone saying, "What was that like?" And I was just like, it was absurd. It was completely absurd. I didn't know how to put it into words because it was just like, it was a bit weird. Like, how do I describe this? And I really had to go into the emotion and understand, like, okay, what I felt up there, like the deepest sense of peace that I've ever experienced, like deeper than the deepest sleep, but your eyes are open and all you can see is just ethereal. It's like being in heaven, how I'd imagine being in heaven. And when I came back from that journey, I'd just come out of a relationship where my ex-partner had cheated on me, and I was like, okay, peace, man, peace. Like, it's really good. But that's kind of as far as I got with the integration. It was just like, oh, it was really nice feeling peace. Why do I not do more things that make me feel peaceful? And I didn't fully understand how it was going to be woven into my life back home. But about a month after getting back, he reached out and he'd into the jungle, done a lot of work with ayahuasca, wanted to get back together. And I remember and he'd said, like, you can have access to my phone, you can have access to my laptop, you can have everything. Like, I want you to know you can trust me completely. And I just remember in that moment thinking, like, oh wow, like how deeply unpeaceful my life would be if I were to get back together with someone who'd betrayed me and to have to live a life where I was like going through my partner's phone and like it was like, wow, like peace, this needs to be a really important North Star in my decision making for the way that I lead my life. And as someone who's come from dysfunctional background with lots of with no peace, with loads of chaos and disturbances, the nervous system becomes really used to that. And so unconsciously, as Jung says, that unconscious is attracted to the familiar. My body was drawing me towards partners who invited chaos into my life, and I was making decisions that brought more chaos into my life, and nothing dramatic, just packing more into a day than one should to live a peaceful existence, or overstretching myself, working too much, these things. And after Bufo, it was like, every time I was at a crossroads or a decision was presented, that feeling was there to guide me and remind me this is really important. This feels really good. And it's drastically improved the quality of my life. As you know, love doing nothing. And in the past, I would have felt so guilty about that, but it's because I can be still and feel peaceful in a way that I never had access to that before.
Yeah, that's powerful. To be able to connect to that space. I'm just curious, have you had any reactivations from your Bufo experience?
Yeah, so many reactivations. So many. Basically, in euphoric and ecstatic states are the times that I'll often get a reactivation, and I probably haven't had one for about 6 months now, but that's years after I did the experience. Often they'll come, say I've been to a dance, and I've really been getting up into that high vibrational space. And then I come home, and at the end of the day, I lie in bed and I fall asleep. And it's at the moment that I'm about to nod off that just boom, okay, wow, we're back into that white void. And it's so powerful. That alone, like so much of the work we do with groups and participants on integration is like how to re-access the
Mm,
Bufo realm, or the realm of whatever medicine you journeyed with. And the magical thing about Bufo is like it just comes back. It just comes back when you least expect it. And it's amazing to have those little micro reminders. I feel they come when we need them too. When we're starting to lose touch with the experience or maybe get a little bit sidetracked, just hey, remember what happened up there and why that was significant for you. What about you? Reactivations?
a few times. The
I'm
first,
asking the question, but I was actually there for one of them.
yeah, the first one was with rapé. Had a rapé, and I'd done rapé before, amazing experiences, and this time it was out in nature in Hampstead Heath. You served me, and I was there. I was back in that space. It was unbelievable to return to that space. The second time I remember was a Noya Rao microdose breathwork session. Once more, I was there. Those are the two that come to mind right now. But as you say, they're powerful reminders, and I don't need reactivations. I can just recall, like I can close my eyes and see myself in that space and those lessons. And there were many more lessons. Go over the notes. Yeah, no fear.
Yeah. Yeah, just I'd actually forgotten about this before we had this conversation, but it was after Bufo that I had my first involuntary orgasm doing breath work 3 days after my Bufo ceremony. And I feel that it just cleared a lot of like energetic blocks, stagnant stuff from my system and allowed the energy to move more freely through my body. Like that's magical, really. And you couldn't. It was not my how my intentions were very unrelated to that, but it just works through the entire system in a way that when you're up there, just floating in the white void. You don't know the ways in which it's impacting your energy field, your body, your cognition, and I think that's another difference with ayahuasca and mushrooms is that the the impact is long lasting and enduring and it reveals itself very slowly over time on the other side.
I'm so happy you shared that because I was reading through my notes and I wrote it felt orgasmic while I was in.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not something I shared with anyone, just like maybe thoughts around shame about that, maybe. I'll be curious to ask Diego, the facilitator, what it was like holding that space because there, in between one of my takes, according to my notes, was that feeling. So yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. And since we're oversharing already, I'll share that having an orgasm was another time where I had a reactivation too. So there's definitely a connection between those two sets of neural pathways, what's going on physiologically and energetically. Yeah. Let's put that in the let's put that in the brochure. Mm. And in terms of, yeah, what happens before, what happens after, because as we talk about extensively, like this work is meaningless in isolation, in a vacuum. It's a whole process of how do we take those altered states experiences and really weave them into the tapestry of our day-to-day lives. Talk a bit about the training, the program that we're running, and also just from your own experience about what was valuable for you in terms of integrating what is objectively quite an abstract experience.
Yes, so I came full circle. The first time I heard about Bufo, the question for me was, why do people book retreats and then book another one straight after without even having the first? And here's me going to Bali, completely forgotten about that part of my process. I'd booked Bufo and I'd booked mushrooms in nature. I then have the Bufo experience just questioning, I don't need any more. And then I remembered, oh my God, I've got mushroom journey booked, which I don't need, I don't want either. And so the first thing integration wise was I fell into that trap of chasing these experiences. And here I am able to in real time catch it and reach out to the mushroom facilitator and say, look, you know, I was having Bufo. I don't think I want mushrooms right now. And they were like, yeah, totally understand. I had a feeling that was going to be the case. And so the first thing for me was I understood how easy it is to fall into that cycle of wanting to chase experiences, but then correct myself. And now I just stick to the call. Even when the call is coming to me, I'm nervous about, I don't want to do this. And, you know, we were speaking about San Pedro, for example, like so many synchronicities coming my way. I'm like, no, I'm not ready until it's kind of like in my face. And so integration wise, so many lessons, knowing when enough is enough, knowing not to chase experiences, knowing that the answers are inside of me. I don't need to go outsourcing outsourcing advice. Or I mean, there is a time and a place for getting advice, it's important, but that's not my first port of call anymore. First is to, okay, let me sit with it, let me go inside. And all of that also comes from the training that I've been on and that we share. We look at emotions, how to first of all sit with ourselves. And so whereas before I would go out searching for answers, now I can sit with the tension. I can invite people sharing challenging moments without it becoming overwhelming. I can hold space. And so we share all of those techniques: shadow work, breath work, dream work, working with nature, in these really advanced integration tools, which I don't think is out there. Talking to people who go on retreats, they would have a ceremony and then they're off. They might never look at the journal the journal entries. They might not work with creativity. And so we share all these tools that can help us go back into the experience, continue to get those lessons. I can talk about the training forever. It's, yeah, there's so much. We just finished the ayahuasca container and I'm collating all the exercises and I'm like, wow, we've really packed so much into this. And it's like a tool set to use at any time. So I've shared some of those tools. There are a lot. There's so much in there. It's up to people to bring them into their day-to-day life.
Yeah, definitely. And I think because the experience, I mean, it feels like eternity, but in literal terms, you're only up there for 20 minutes to an hour in general with Bufo. And so I guess that's another difference with Bufo versus ayahuasca and mushrooms, is that with the duration of those ceremonies being much longer, you're already cognitively starting to process what's happening as you go, as you're going through the journey. Whereas with Bufo, it's so fast that your brain and your body, everything has to catch up on the other side. So you land back down into reality. And I think for that reason, integration is even more important. And so much of it is through the group work that we do, through the exercises, but also to understand that life becomes the ceremony, and that the completion of the work that happened in the Bufo realm starts to unfold in the moments that are occurring in your day-to-day life and the insights that you have. It's so funny because, I'm doing this diet with Eric at the minute in London at home, still going out, still doing things, and it actually reminded me a lot of Bufo in that respect, and that, I'm having dreams, I'm having insights, I'm having messages, but I'm also just having weird chance encounters with people and conversations that with specific themes that are feeding into the stuff that's coming through from the plant. And that's really the goal, isn't it, for life to become the ceremony, so that we're not constantly chasing highs, chasing new experiences, but instead just like extracting the juice and the joy from every single moment, and relating to every single moment with the same care and presence that we enter these sacred experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. And just off what you just shared, Carl Jung talked about the individuation. We spend the first part of our lives putting on this front, this identity to fit in. It might be survival, to be seen, to be heard, to be safe through what we call the persona, all these masks that we wear. And then there comes a point where we start questioning: is this really who we are? And if we hear that call, we can then start peeling the mask off. And there's a three-stage process. The first stage is to do shadow work, which is what we do in the training. And then the second step is to integrate the healthy expressions of the masculine and the feminine. And then the third is what he calls living a symbolic life. And what you just shared is like, that's it. Life is a ceremony, and seeing everything as sacred. And that's been my experience day to day, pretty
Mm.
much connecting with all the tools that we share is from that individuation process. And it is a beautiful way to be.
Yeah, yeah. That feels like a really beautiful note to end. One more thing I said we talk about is, I feel like we've sort of tangentially spoken about this, but why it's called the God molecule, because it's like meeting God. That's that's how so many people describe the experience of being blasted into heaven and just touching divinity.
Yeah, yeah, being touched by divinity, definitely.
Mm. So yeah, we're going at the end of July out to Portugal. There'll be, each person coming will get two private Bufo ceremonies, meet God. So if you're interested, there's a link in the bio to apply. We are going to be doing a series of lives over the next few weeks. If you have any questions, if there's stuff that you want to know, then just drop one of us a message.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mo. Always a pleasure
Sure.
to speak to you.
No, thank you. I can talk about Bufo or anytime.
Pace yourself, Mo. We got a few more weeks of this to go.
Will do. Knowing when
Thanks,
enough is
Mo.
enough.
Enough is enough.
Pleasure, Melissa. I'll see you soon.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.